Captain Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of his ship, looking out at the stars. The New Sol was not a big ship, but it was fast and quiet. For 3 years he had been flying through space, mapping new worlds and checking old ones. It was peaceful work, and Hyunwoo liked it that way. "Captain, we are getting close to the Kepler system," said his pilot, a young woman named Da-eun. She had been with his crew for 2 years now. "Should we start the deep scan?" Hyunwoo nodded. "Yes, but keep it quiet. The Velthari patrol ships sometimes come through here." The Velthari were one of the 3 big powers in the galaxy. They looked like giant lizards and thought they were better than everyone else. Humans had been part of the Galactic Council for almost 300 years, but the aliens still treated them like children. Humans fixed their machines, helped them talk to each other, and did the boring jobs nobody else wanted. Da-eun worked at her controls. The ship's sensors reached out into space looking for anything strange. Most systems were empty except for rocks and gas. Sometimes they found old ruins or dead ships. The galaxy was full of things that used to be alive but weren't anymore. "Captain," Da-eun said, her voice worried, "I'm seeing something weird here." Hyunwoo walked over to look at her screen. The numbers didn't make sense. "What am I looking at?" "It's like something big was here, but now it's gone. The space around this planet is all wrong, like something took a huge bite out of reality." Before Hyunwoo could answer, his communication officer spoke up. "Captain, we're getting a call from Dr. Soo-jin at Research Station 7. Hyunwoo knew Soo-jin. She was one of Earth's best scientists, and she studied alien life. If she was calling him directly, something was wrong. "Put her through," he said. Dr. Soo-jin's face appeared on the main screen. She looked tired and scared. "Hyunwoo, I need to talk to you privately." "Can you come to the station?" "What's this about, Soo-jin?" "I can't say over open channels, but I've found something the council doesn't want us to know about." Hyunwoo looked at his crew. They were good people, but this sounded dangerous. "We'll be there in 6 hours." The call ended and the bridge was quiet. Da-eun looked at her captain with questions in her eyes, but she didn't ask them. That was why Hyunwoo liked his crew. They trusted him. 6 hours later, the New Sol docked at Research Station 7. The station was built inside a dead asteroid, hidden from most sensors. It was where human scientists studied things they weren't supposed to know about. Dr. Soo-jin met Hyunwoo at the airlock. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and quick hands. Right now those eyes looked worried. "Come with me," she said, "and don't talk until we get to my lab." They walked through the station's halls. Other scientists nodded at Soo-jin but didn't stop to talk. Everyone seemed busy and nervous. Soo-jin's lab was deep in the station behind 3 locked doors. When they were finally alone, she sat down hard in her chair. "Hyunwoo, how much do you know about galactic history? I mean the real history, not what they teach in council schools." "I know humans showed up late to the party," Hyunwoo said. "The other races had been around for millions of years before we learned to fly between stars. That's what they want us to think." Soo-jin pulled up a hologram showing the galaxy. "But I've been studying old data, really old data, from dead civilizations that existed before the current council powers." The hologram changed, showing different time periods. "Look at this pattern. Every 50 million years something happens. Advanced civilizations just disappear. All of them. At the same time." Hyunwoo stared at the display. "What could do that?" "I don't know. But the few records that survive all mention the same thing. They call them the Devourers or the darkness between stars. And Hyunwoo, according to my calculations, were due." Before Hyunwoo could respond, alarms started ringing throughout the station. Red lights flashed and a voice came over the speakers. "All personnel to emergency stations. Unknown contacts detected in deep space. This is not a drill." Soo-jin and Hyunwoo ran to the station's command center. The main screen showed sensor readings from the outer system. Hundreds of contacts were moving toward the inner planets. "But these weren't normal ships. What are we looking at?" Hyunwoo asked the station commander. "We don't know, sir. They appeared out of nowhere, moving faster than anything we've ever seen. And they're big. Really big." On Luna Base, Engineer Jiho was working the night shift when his sensors went crazy. He had been tracking strange energy readings for months, but nobody listened to him. The alien supervisors always said humans worried too much about nothing. Now his screens were full of contacts. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They were coming from the empty space between galaxies, moving toward inhabited systems. Jiho tried to call his supervisor, but the communication lines were jammed. He could only watch as the unknown fleet got closer and closer to the inner worlds. The first attack came without warning. The Velthari homeworld, capital of their empire, simply stopped transmitting. One moment, their planetary defense grid was sending normal reports. The next moment, there was nothing but silence. Then the refugee ships started arriving. The few Velthari vessels that escaped brought horrible news. Their world was gone. Not destroyed, but consumed. Eaten by machines that turned living matter into more of themselves. Dr. Su-jin watched the reports with growing horror. "This is it," she whispered. "This is what I was afraid of." Captain Hyunwoo stood beside her, watching alien refugees flee in terror. For 300 years, humans had lived in the shadow of the great galactic powers. They had been the junior members, the helpful servants, the ones who fixed things and stayed out of the way. Now those great powers were running in fear from something that came from the darkness between stars. And as Hyunwoo watched the chaos unfold, he wondered if humanity's time of hiding in the shadows was about to end. The enemy fleet kept coming, consuming everything in its path. World after world went silent. The great alien empires that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years were being swept away like dust. But deep in human space, on hidden bases and secret facilities, old machines began to wake up. Signals passed between Earth and its colonies, using codes that no alien had ever been taught to read. Something was stirring in the human worlds, something that had been waiting for exactly this moment. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as two forces prepared to meet. One was ancient beyond measure, a hunger that had devoured galaxies. The other was young and fierce, a species that had learned to survive by preparing for the unthinkable. The galaxy was about to discover what humans really were when their backs were against the wall. The Devourer fleet moved through space like a disease. Every system they touched went dark. Every world they reached became nothing but empty rock and metal. The great alien civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years were helpless against them. Captain Hyunwoo received evacuation orders while his ship was still docked at Research Station 7. The message was simple. All human vessels were to retreat to designated safe zones immediately. No exceptions. But as Hyunwoo prepared to leave, Dr. Su-jin grabbed his arm. "Don't go to the safe zones," she said quietly. "I just received different orders. Coded ones." She showed him a message on her personal device. It was written in Old Korean, using symbols that most humans had forgotten. But Hyunwoo's grandfather had taught him to read them when he was young. "Report to Facility Omega 7, he read slowly. "Bring all research data." "The sleepers are waking. What does that mean?" Hyunwoo asked. "I don't know," Su-jin said. "But these orders came from someone with authority I didn't know existed. They took the new Sol to coordinates that led to an old, human colony called New Busan. The planet had been abandoned for 50 years after its mines ran dry. But as they approached, their sensors detected massive energy readings coming from underground. "There's a whole base down there," said Da-yoon, studying her instruments. "How did we not know about this?" They landed at coordinates that led to a hidden entrance. As they walked down metal corridors that stretched deep into the planet's crust, Hyunwoo felt like he was walking into a secret that was bigger than anything he had imagined. The corridors led to a huge underground chamber. In the center was a cryo-sleep pod, and standing beside it was the oldest human Hyunwoo had ever seen. The man looked like he was 100 years old, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "I am Admiral Taemin," the old man said. "I've been waiting for this day for a very long time." "Waiting for what day?" Hyunwoo asked. "The day the Devourers returned," Taemin said simply. "We knew they would come back. We've been preparing for over 400 years. Dr. Su-jin stepped forward. "Who is we? And how did you know?" Admiral Taemin smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. "Dr. Su-jin, you discovered that advanced civilizations disappear every 50 million years. What you didn't discover is that we found records from the last time it happened, records left by the survivors." He led them to a control room filled with displays showing the galaxy. But these weren't normal star charts. They showed human colonies, trade routes, and shipping lanes. Hundreds of them. "Every human settlement in the galaxy is connected to this network," Taemin explained. "Every trading post, every mining station, every peaceful little colony where humans grow food and fix alien machines. They're all part of the plan." "What plan?" Hyunwoo demanded. Instead of answering, Taemin activated something. Across the galaxy, a signal went out to every human facility. and one by one they began to change. On the trading station at Rigel Prime, engineer Minho received the activation signal while he was fixing a Nexari transport ship. The Nexari were crystal beings who thought they were very smart, but they could never figure out human technology. "What is that alarm?" asked the Nexari captain as sirens began to ring. "Emergency drill," Minho said calmly. But his hands were already working at a hidden control panel. The trading station began to unfold. Walls slid apart to reveal weapon systems. The peaceful dock where alien ships came for repairs transformed into a military installation. The Nexari ship found itself surrounded by gun barrels that hadn't been there moments before. "What is the meaning of this?" the Nexari captain demanded. "The meaning," said Minho, "is that you should probably call your fleet and tell them to start being very polite to humans." The same thing was happening across the galaxy. Human mining ships revealed hidden weapon systems. Cargo vessels opened their holds to show fighter craft instead of trade goods. Even the small research stations like the one where Dr. Sujin worked sprouted defensive systems that could fight off battle fleets. Back on New Busan, Admiral Tae-min showed Hyunwoo and Sujin the true scope of humanity's preparation. "We learned something from the old records," he said. "The species that survived the last Devourer attack didn't survive by being strong or smart. They survived by being ready and by working together. But the Council thinks humans are peaceful," Sujin said. "We've spent centuries convincing them we're not a threat." "Exactly," Tae-min said. "The best way to prepare for war is to make your enemies think you're not preparing for war." Every human colony that looked like a simple farming world had weapons buried under the wheat fields. Every trader who seemed harmless was actually scouting defenses. Every diplomatic mission was gathering intelligence. The displays around them showed the Devourer fleet advancing through the galaxy. They had already consumed the outer systems of 3 major civilizations. Their ships were massive, dark things that seemed to absorb light itself. "But how can we fight them?" Hyunwoo asked. "They destroyed the Velthari homeworld in hours. The Velthari had the strongest military in the galaxy." "The Velthari were strong," Tae-min agreed. "But they fought like Velthari. They used Velthari tactics against an enemy that had already defeated 1,000 species just like them." He brought up tactical displays showing human fleet movements. Ships were converging from all over the galaxy. But they weren't moving like any military formation Hyunwoo had ever seen. "We're not going to fight like aliens," Tae-min explained. "We're going to fight like humans, and humans fight dirty." Across the galaxy, alien governments were panicking. The Nexari Collective sent desperate messages to their human trade partners asking for help. The Morden hegemony, who lived in gas clouds and thought they were untouchable, suddenly realized that human ships had been visiting their territory for decades. All of them were discovering that the helpful, peaceful humans they had known were not exactly what they seemed. On Luna Base, Engineer Jiho was no longer just watching sensors. He was coordinating a network of observation posts that stretched across 3 star systems. His alien supervisors had fled when the first reports of the Devourer fleet arrived, leaving the base in human hands. "Sir," said his assistant, a young woman named Heejin, "we're getting reports from the outer defense line. The enemy fleet is bigger than we thought." Jiho studied the tactical display. The Devourers had thousands of ships, each one the size of a small moon. But he wasn't worried anymore. For the first time in his career, he was working with his own people, using technology that had been hidden for centuries. "Send a message to Admiral Tae-min," he said. "Tell him the prey has taken the bait. All enemy forces are committed to their current attack pattern." "Yes, sir." "And the final protocol?" Jiho looked out at Earth, hanging blue and peaceful in space. Soon it would be peaceful no longer. "Activate Project Ragnarok," he said quietly. "It's time to wake up the homeworld." Deep beneath Earth's oceans, machines that had slept for centuries began to stir. The planet itself began to change, preparing for a transformation that would shock the galaxy. Admiral Tae-min stood in his command center, watching reports flow in from across human space. The Devourers were advancing exactly as predicted. The alien civilizations were falling exactly as expected. Everything was going according to a plan that had been 400 years in the making. "Send the activation codes to all human vessels," he ordered. "Begin Phase 2. "Yes, sir." "All ships report ready." "And Admiral?" Taemin's aide asked quietly. "What about the aliens? The ones who survived this?" Tae-min looked at the tactical display. where symbols representing human forces were moving into position throughout the galaxy. Soon those forces would reveal themselves in a way that would change everything. After today, he said, they'll know exactly what humans are capable of when someone threatens our family. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their absolute refusal to go quietly into the dark. Earth had been quiet for 3 days. No ships left orbit. No communications went out. The human homeworld had simply stopped talking to the rest of the galaxy, just as the Devourer fleet reached the middle systems. On Luna Base, Engineer Jiho watched his instruments with growing excitement. Deep beneath Earth's oceans, something massive was stirring. Seismic readings showed movement on a scale that should have been impossible. "Sir," said Hyejin, staring at her screen with wide eyes, "the Pacific Ocean is moving." "Moving how?" Jiho asked, though he already knew the answer. "It's rising. The whole ocean floor is rising." Around the galaxy, alien refugees and human allies watched through long-range sensors as Earth began to change. Water spilled off the rising land mass like waterfalls the size of continents. What emerged was not land but metal. Vast expanses of hull plating and weapon systems that had been hidden beneath the ocean for centuries. Earth was not just a planet. Earth was a ship. The biggest ship anyone had ever imagined. Fleet Admiral Sungmin stood on the bridge of humanity's ultimate weapon, looking out at space through viewports that had once been at the bottom of the deepest ocean trenches. Around him, thousands of crew members worked at stations that stretched as far as he could see. "All systems report ready, Admiral," said Commander Yuri, his tactical officer. She was a small woman with quick eyes who had spent her entire life studying alien military tactics. Now she would put that knowledge to use. "How long until we clear Earth's gravity well?" Sungmin asked. 14 hours, sir. The planetary engines are operating at 60% capacity." Sungmin nodded. Earth had been transformed over centuries of secret construction. The planet's core had been replaced with the most powerful engines humanity could build. Its crust had been honeycombed with weapon systems, shield generators, and living spaces for a crew of 50 million people. When the Devourers had first appeared, humanity's leaders had made a simple decision. If something could destroy entire civilizations, then humanity would become something that had never existed before, a civilization that could fight back. "Sir," said Captain Boram, commander of the ship's ground forces, "we're receiving signals from the outer defense lines. Admiral Jae-sung reports the Devourer advance fleet is 3 hours out from the Mars system. Admiral Jae-sung commanded a fleet of ships that looked nothing like the peaceful traders the aliens had known. These were vessels built for war, designed by humans who had studied every battle in recorded history and learned from all of them. His flagship, the Soul's Vengeance, faced a Devourer ship 10 times its size. The alien machine was dark metal that seemed to swallow light, covered in weapons that could crack moons. "All ships," Jae-sung said calmly into his communicator. "Remember what we learned in training. These things are smart, but they think like machines. We think like humans. Use that." The Devourer ship fired first, sending beams of energy that could have vaporized a city. But the Soul's Vengeance wasn't where the beams went. Human ships moved like angry wasps, never staying in one place long enough to be hit. "Return fire," Jae-sung ordered. "Target their sensor clusters." Human weapons were different from alien ones. Where the aliens used brute force, humans used precision. Where aliens fired massive energy blasts, humans fired smart missiles that could think for themselves and change targets in flight. The Devourer ship found itself blind as its sensors were destroyed one by one. It fired wildly, hitting nothing but empty space. Then human boarding pods struck its hull and Captain Boram's troops poured inside. Fighting inside a Devourer ship was like fighting inside a nightmare. The corridors were filled with machines that had been designed to process living beings into raw materials. But human soldiers had trained for this. They moved in teams covering each other, using explosives and tactics that the logical Devourers couldn't predict. "These things don't understand crazy," Boram said into her comm as her team fought through the ship's core. "So let's show them crazy." Her soldiers did things that made no tactical sense to a machine mind. They took dangerous risks to save wounded comrades. They used damaged equipment in ways it was never designed for. They fought on when they should have retreated and retreated when they should have fought. The Devourer ship's computer systems couldn't process human behavior. Its defensive algorithms failed because they were designed to fight logical opponents who followed predictable patterns. Within hours, the first Devourer ship in millions of years was captured intact. Back on the rising Earth, Dr. Sujin studied the data streaming in from the battle. She was no longer just a scientist. She was the ship's xenobiology officer, responsible for understanding how the enemy worked. "Admiral," she reported to Sung Min, "I'm seeing something interesting. The Devourer's tactical computers are having trouble processing human combat behavior." "What kind of trouble?" Yuri asked. "They're designed to fight species that value logic over emotion. But humans do things that don't make sense from a survival standpoint. We risk our lives for strangers. We refuse to surrender when surrender would be logical. We use broken equipment and impossible tactics. And that confuses them? More than confuses them. It breaks their decision-making systems. They literally cannot predict what humans will do next." Admiral Sung Min smiled grimly. "Then we'd better give them something really unpredictable." Across the solar system, human fleets emerged from hiding places they had maintained for centuries. Asteroid bases revealed themselves as battle stations. Hidden shipyards opened their doors to release vessels that had been built in secret. But the aliens who monitored these events from safe distances saw something that amazed them even more than the ships. They saw how humans fought. Velthari survivors watching from refugee camps could not believe what they were seeing. Human ships operated beyond safe parameters, pushing their engines and weapons to breaking points that would terrify any rational species. Human crews fought on in vessels that were technically destroyed, using emergency power and pure determination. "They are insane," whispered a Nexari observer. "They fight like they want to die." "No," said an old Morden who had studied humans for decades. "They fight like they want to live more than anything else in the universe." The main Devourer fleet reached Earth's outer system as the planet finished rising from its ocean. For the first time in their existence, the mechanical beings faced something they had never encountered. A civilization that had spent centuries preparing specifically to fight them. Earth's weapons opened fire from a distance of 3 light minutes. Energy beams that had been charged by an entire planet's power grid reached across space to strike the leading Devourer ships. These weren't the desperate defensive shots of a dying civilization. These were the calculated attacks of a species that had planned this moment for 400 years. "Sir," Yuri reported, "enemy fleet is breaking formation." They weren't expecting resistance at this level. "How many ships in their main fleet?" Sungmin asked. "Approximately 12,000 vessels of various sizes." "And how many ships do we have?" Yuri checked her displays. "All human vessels reporting ready, sir. Total count, 8,000 ships plus Earth itself." Sungmin looked out at the enemy fleet. Each Devourer ship was larger and more powerful than anything humanity had built. By every logical measure, the humans should lose this battle quickly and completely, but humans had never been particularly logical. "Send a message to all ships," he ordered. "Today we find out if 400 years of preparation was enough. All vessels advance to contact. Show them what humans do when someone threatens our home." The greatest battle in galactic history was about to begin. On one side was an ancient hunger that had devoured civilization since before Earth's sun was born. On the other side was a young, angry species that had learned to survive by refusing to accept the impossible. Above Earth, space filled with fire and fury as two forces that should never have met, prepared to settle the question of who would inherit the galaxy. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as humanity's true nature was finally revealed to the universe. And in the depths of space, other alien civilizations watched and realized that they had never really known their human neighbors at all. The battle raged across 5 star systems. What had started as Earth's defense had become something much larger. A war for the survival of all life in the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Sung Min coordinated the fight from Earth's bridge, but this was unlike any battle in recorded history. Human fleets operated across dozens of light years, each one fighting independently while somehow working together as a single massive organism. "Reports coming in from the Centauri front," announced Commander Yuri, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Admiral Minjae's fleet has successfully defended the colony worlds, but at heavy cost." "And the Rigel offensive?" "Captain Dong Hyun's strike force has penetrated the enemy rearguard. They're attacking Devourer supply lines." Sung Min studied the 3-dimensional display that showed the entire battlefield. Red dots represented enemy ships. Blue dots were human forces. The pattern that emerged looked like madness, but there was a logic to it that only humans seemed to understand. "Sir," said a young communications officer named So Young, "we're receiving distress calls from Nixari and Mordoon fleets. They're requesting immediate assistance." "Where?" "Everywhere, sir. The aliens are being overrun in every sector where they don't have human support." This was the reality the galaxy was discovering. Without human protection, the great alien civilizations were helpless against the Devourers. Their energy weapons barely scratched enemy hulls. Their shields collapsed under concentrated fire. Their tactics, refined over millions of years, were useless against an enemy that had already defeated countless species just like them. But humans fought differently. Captain Boram led her troops aboard another captured Devourer vessel, the fifth one her forces had taken in 3 days. Fighting inside enemy ships was still nightmarish work, but her soldiers had learned the Devourer's weaknesses. "Remember," she told her team as they prepared to breach the ship's core, "these machines process information faster than us, but they can't understand why we do what we do. Use that." Her soldiers moved through the ship like they were dancing instead of fighting. They took routes that made no tactical sense, used weapons in ways they weren't designed for, and made decisions based on intuition rather than logic. The Devourer ship's defensive systems couldn't adapt. Its computer calculated that humans should retreat when damaged, but they advanced. It predicted they would use heavy weapons, but they used improvised explosives. It expected them to value their own survival, but they sacrificed themselves to save their teammates. "Core secured," Boram reported as her team planted charges that would turn the massive ship into a weapon against its own fleet. Moving to extraction point. But even as humans won individual battles, the scope of the war was growing. The main Devourer fleet had split into dozens of smaller forces, each one attacking a different system. They were trying to overwhelm humanity by forcing them to fight everywhere at once. "They're adapting," Yuri observed, watching the enemy's movements. "The Devourers are learning from our tactics." "Of course they are," Sungmin replied. "They've been doing this for millions of years, but they're making one mistake." "What mistake?" "They think this is a normal war." At that moment, Engineer Jiho activated a system that had been hidden across the galaxy for centuries. Every human colony, every trading post, every small settlement that aliens had dismissed as unimportant revealed weapons that had been waiting in silence. The Devourers found themselves under attack from directions they hadn't even known existed. Human civilians who had seemed harmless were using mining equipment as weapons. Transport ships were ramming enemy vessels. Even the small research stations were fighting back with improvised defenses. "Sir," So Young reported, her voice filled with amazement, "we're getting combat reports from everywhere. Humans are fighting on over 3,000 worlds simultaneously. This was humanity's true strength, not their weapons or their ships, but their absolute refusal to give up." Every human in the galaxy was part of the war effort now. Farmers used their tractors to attack enemy landing parties. Children too young to fight carried ammunition to soldiers. Old people who could barely walk operated communication systems that kept the resistance coordinated. The Devourers had never faced anything like it. They were used to conquering civilizations that fought with armies and fleets, but humans were fighting with everything they had, including things that weren't supposed to be weapons. Captain Hyun-woo found himself commanding a battle group defending the Vega system, where Nexari refugees had gathered in massive crystal ships. The aliens watched in amazement as human vessels performed maneuvers that should have been impossible. "How are they doing that?" asked the Nexari fleet commander, watching a human destroyer somehow survive a direct hit from a weapon that should have vaporized it. "They're operating beyond safe parameters," Hyun-woo explained calmly as his own ship shook from enemy fire. "Human ships are designed to be pushed past their limits. But that should destroy them. Sometimes it does. But humans would rather die fighting than live in slavery." The Nexari commander fell silent, realizing for the first time what kind of species they had been sharing the galaxy with. Dr. Su Jin made her most important discovery while analyzing captured Devourer data. Deep in the enemy computer systems, She found the records of every species the Devourers had ever fought. "Admiral," she reported to Sung Min, "I know why the Devourers are having trouble with us." "Explain." "Every other species they've defeated followed predictable patterns. When threatened, civilizations either fought with logic or surrendered when defeat seemed certain. But humans do neither. What do we do instead? We get angry, and anger makes us unpredictable. The Devourers' tactical computers are designed to fight logical opponents. They literally cannot process emotional decision-making. This revelation changed everything. Human commanders began making decisions based not on logic, but on what felt right. They took risks that no computer could calculate. They made sacrifices that no algorithm could understand. And it worked. The Devourer fleet, which had conquered 1,000 galaxies, began to falter. Their ships were being destroyed faster than they could adapt. Their tactical advantage was useless against opponents who didn't follow logical patterns. But the enemy had one final strategy. "Sir," Yuri announced, "the main Devourer fleet is withdrawing from our space." "Withdrawing where?" "Back toward dark space between the galaxies. Long-range sensors show them regrouping at the edge of our galaxy." Sung Min understood immediately. "They're going to call for reinforcements." The truth was terrifying. The fleet, that had already brought humanity to the edge of destruction, was just the advance force. In the dark space between galaxies, millions more Devourer ships waited. If they were allowed to regroup and return with their full strength, not even humanity's fury would be enough to stop them. "Sir," said So Young quietly, "what are our orders?" Sung Min looked at the tactical display one more time. The smart move would be to let the Devourers go and prepare defenses for their return. The logical move would be to celebrate victory and hope the enemy never came back. But humans had never been particularly smart or logical. "Signal all fleets," Sung Min ordered. "We're going after them." "Sir? Into dark space?" "Into dark space. If we let them regroup, they'll come back stronger. This ends now one way or another." Around the galaxy, alien civilizations watched in disbelief as humanity made the most insane decision in galactic history. Instead of celebrating their impossible victory, humans were choosing to pursue their enemy into the void between galaxies, where no biological species had ever ventured. But as the human fleets prepared for the most dangerous journey in history, something else was happening. Alien ships began joining the human formations. Velthari survivors who had lost everything to the Devourers volunteered for the mission. Nexari vessels with their crystal crews demanded to be included. Even the gas-dwelling Mordun sent ships to join humanity's impossible quest. For the first time in galactic history, all the species of the galaxy were united behind a single cause: following humanity into the dark to end the Devourer threat forever. The greatest chase in the history of the universe was about to begin. The journey into dark space took 3 months. No biological species had ever traveled so far from the light of stars, into the cold void between galaxies. But humanity led the way, and the other species followed. Fleet Admiral Sung Min stood on Earth's bridge, watching the scanner displays that showed nothing but emptiness ahead. Behind his flagship, thousands of ships from every race in the galaxy formed the largest fleet in history. But even this massive force seemed tiny in the endless darkness. "Sir," reported Commander Yuri, "we're detecting massive energy signatures ahead. Distance 2 light hours. Show me." The main screen filled with an image that made everyone on the bridge fall silent. In the void ahead of them was a structure so large it defied understanding. It looked like a metal spider web that stretched across space for millions of kilometers, and everywhere on its surface Devourer ships moved like ants. "How many ships?" Sung Min asked quietly. "Preliminary count suggests over 1 million vessels, sir, and the structure itself appears to be some kind of construction facility. They're building more ships." Dr. Sujin studied the readings from her science station. "Admiral, I think we're looking at their home base. This is where they've been building their forces for millions of years, and now we have to destroy it." The human fleet moved closer, using stealth systems that had been perfected over centuries of hiding their true capabilities. Around them, alien vessels struggled with the reality of what they were attempting. They were going to attack the home base of a species that had conquered galaxies. All ships, Sungmin announced over the fleet communication system. This is it. Behind us is everything we've ever known or loved. Ahead of us is the thing that wants to destroy it all. Today we find out if courage is stronger than hunger. The battle began when Captain Boram's strike teams infiltrated the outer edge of the Devourer structure. Her soldiers moved through corridors designed for machines, fighting against defenses that had been built to protect against anything. But her troops had one advantage: they were fighting for something the Devourers could never understand. "This is for Earth," Boram shouted as her team fought their way toward the structure's core. Around her, human soldiers did impossible things because giving up was not an option. The main fleet engagement started when Admiral Jae-sung's battle group opened fire on the Devourer shipyards. Human weapons, designed specifically to fight these enemies, tore through defenses that had protected the structure for eons. But the enemy responded with overwhelming force. Millions of Devourer ships poured out of the structure like angry insects. Each one was larger and more powerful than most human vessels. "Sir," Yuri reported, "we're outnumbered approximately 100 to 1. "Then we'd better make sure each of our ships counts for more than 100 of theirs," Sungmin replied calmly. And somehow, they did. Human ships fought like wounded animals, pushing their systems beyond all limits. When their weapons ran out of ammunition, they rammed enemy vessels. When their hulls were breached, they kept fighting on emergency power. When their crews were wounded, they patched themselves up and returned to their stations. Captain Hyunwoo found his ship surrounded by Devourer vessels, each one trying to capture or destroy him. But instead of surrendering, he did something that shocked both his enemies and his allies. He laughed. "Da-Yun," he said to his pilot, "remember when we used to complain that our job was boring?" "Yes, sir," she replied, somehow managing to smile while steering through a cloud of enemy fire. "I take it back." The new soul danced through the battle like it was celebrating, not fighting for its life. And watching this display of pure human stubbornness, other ships began to fight the same way. Alien crews who had spent their lives following logical tactics started taking risks that made no sense. Nexari crystal ships began ramming Devourer vessels. Velthari survivors fought with a fury that surprised even themselves. The gas-dwelling Morden used their atmospheric manipulation abilities in ways they had never tried before. "They're learning from us," Yuri observed, watching alien ships perform maneuvers they had learned from human examples. "No," Sungmin corrected. "They're remembering what it means to fight for something that matters." The battle raged for hours, but slowly the tide began to turn. The Devourers had superior numbers and technology, but they couldn't match the desperate creativity of biological beings fighting for their survival. Deep inside the enemy structure, Captain Boram reached the core control center. The room was filled with machines that had been calculating the destruction of civilizations since before Earth's sun was born. But now those machines faced something they had never encountered, a human soldier who absolutely refused to lose. "This is for everyone you've killed," she said, placing explosive charges that would destroy the structure's central computer. "And this is for everyone you'll never get the chance to kill." The explosions tore through the structure's core, causing chain reactions that spread throughout the massive facility. Devourer ships began losing coordination as their central command systems failed, but the enemy had one final move. "Sir," So Young announced, "the structure is activating some kind of self-destruct system. Energy readings are off the charts. How long until detonation?" 15 minutes, sir. 15 minutes to escape from a structure that was millions of kilometers across. 15 minutes to retreat from an explosion that would be visible from other galaxies. "All ships," Sungmin ordered, "begin immediate withdrawal. Maximum speed." But even as the fleet turned to flee, Admiral Taemin's voice came over the communication system from his command ship. "All vessels, this is Admiral Taemin. I'm staying behind to ensure the structure is completely destroyed." "Sir, you can't," Yuri protested. "Your ship will never survive the explosion." "That's the point," Taemin replied calmly. "Someone needs to make sure these things never threaten anyone again. And I'm old enough that this seems like a good way to go." Across the fleet, other voices joined in. "This is Engineer Minho. I'm staying too. Captain Dong-hyun here. My ship is too damaged to escape anyway. Might as well make it count." Dr. Soo-jin reporting. "I want to gather data on the explosion. For science." One by one, dozens of human ships volunteered to stay behind. Not because they had to, but because it was the right thing to do. The main fleet escaped just as the Devourer structure exploded. The blast was so powerful it created new stars from the energy released. The light could be seen from the home galaxy, a brilliant flash that announced the end of the Devourer threat. But the cost had been enormous. Thousands of ships had been lost. Millions of people had died. The volunteers who stayed behind to ensure the structure's destruction were gone forever. 6 months later, Captain Hyunwoo stood on the rebuilt Luna base, looking out at Earth. The planet had been restored to its original appearance, but everyone knew it could transform again if needed. Humanity's true nature was no longer a secret. "Sir," said Engineer Jiho, now promoted to base commander, "we're receiving a delegation from the Galactic Council. They want to discuss humanity's new status." "What kind of status?" "They're offering to make us the Council's military commanders. Apparently every species in the galaxy wants human protection now." Yunwoo smiled. For centuries, humans had been the junior partners in galactic civilization. Now suddenly everyone wanted them to be in charge. "What should I tell them?" "Tell them we'll think about it," Yunwoo said. "But also tell them that if they ever need us, we'll be ready." In the distance, construction crews were working on something new. It looked like a normal space station, but Hyunwoo knew better. After the Devourer War, humanity had learned an important lesson. Peace was something you protected by being prepared for anything. "Sir," Jiho said quietly, "there's something else. Our deep space sensors are picking up signals from outside the galactic cluster. Something big is moving out there. Another threat, maybe. Or maybe just something curious about the species that defeated the Devourers." Hyunwoo looked out at the stars, which seemed peaceful and quiet. But he knew that somewhere in the darkness humans were watching and waiting. They had learned that the universe was full of dangers. But they had also learned that humans were the kind of species that other species called when they needed someone to stand between them and the dark. The galaxy was safe, for now. And as long as humans were watching over it, it would stay that way. Because when Earth's Dreadnought had risen, the stars themselves had trembled at humanity's wrath. And the universe had learned that there were some species you simply did not want to make angry. The age of humanity had begun.